மறக்காம சர்ப்ரைஸ் பண்ணுங்க. Thank you.
In general, the chances of the queen are high in the middle game. And the reason for that is that the rooks are usually lacking open files and objects to attack, while the queen is capable of attacking many objects, in that case, especially if there is another piece which is helping it. This is a situation from the game Anand against Kramnik. The first thing that comes to which we can see immediately is that white is having large advantage, as his pieces are very well placed. The rooks are exerting pressure on the half open file, the knight is active, the queen is also not bad. The only real problem, to put it this way, is this bishop. It is not really working, and there are no immediate threats. But with his next move, Anand finds a way to open up the position in his favor and to prove that his pieces are really more active. This move is a very strong one and a very beautiful one. This is the move c5. Now black has a difficult choice what to do, how to take on c5. If he takes with the pawn, then he is opening the d file for the rooks, and white has a pleasant choice how to proceed. One thing is rook d7 to occupy the 7th rank, and then to start doubling the rooks on the 7th rank. Then, say, a possible line is bishop e7, rook d7, and if black tries king to g8 in this situation, then knight a7 is a good move, followed by king takes f7, knight takes c6, and white is most likely winning in this situation. All his pieces are now active, even this bishop on b3. Just have a look at these pieces on the king side. They are doing absolutely nothing. While on move number 4, instead of king g8, if black goes c4, trying to counterattack on the queen side, then again knight a7 is strong, with the idea, say, rook d6 to answer rook f takes e7, the small trick. And after knight takes, rook takes, pawn takes on b3, queen takes b3, rook g6, and queen to f3. Once again, white has large advantage, thanks to the fact that these pawns are weak. Double pawns, the one on e5 will be most likely lost in the near future, and also this king is in a constant danger. If we compare the pawn shields of the kings, we will see why. Okay, and the other choice that he has is not only to go rook d7, but white can use the 8th rank, and it's also a nice thing to do in this situation. The rook d8 should be also giving good chances for a win. Say king g8, rook 1 to d7, queen g5, rook e8, with the idea to double the rooks on the 8th rank. This time there are juicy pieces there. The bishop and the knight will be hanging, and the king is there. c4 would be answered again, rook d to d8, and if rook f6, then this time this bishop will be saved. Knight b6, and beautiful tactical way here is knight d4, which is opening the road for the bishop towards the a7 square. For instance, e d5, e5. If now queen e5, then queen g4 is decisive attack, and if rook f7 instead, then white is going to play h4, queen takes e5, queen takes c6, d3, and the complications end in white's favor. Queen takes b6, that pawn, the pawn on d3 is tapped. Black can try to counterattack like that, and to bring the queen closer to checkmate even, with queen g2, but it is white who is faster as his pieces are active. He is delivering the checkmate after queen takes e6 here, followed by queen e5 and rook d7. This king will be checkmated very soon. You can check it for yourselves. But of course we are more interested what will happen in case that black takes with the rook on c5, which hit it in the game. Well, then after knight takes d6, knight takes d6, and rook d6, queen d6, rook takes bishop d6, we are reaching the position of an interest. That's the position in which the queen is fighting the two rooks. The game is close to the endgame now, or likely an endgame. but it was a result of the complications that we have just seen. Anand knew what to do, what to look for, and he knew that his queen is going to be much stronger than the opponent's rooks, which is scattered around and not really working. If we imagine for a second that this rook from h6 was on b6, then the situation would be different. But as it is so inactive, things are not looking great for black. Now queen d3, already starting to create threats. If the bishop retreats now on d8, then the queen will come even closer, attacking that piece, but also getting ready to further on go into the opponent's camp like that. So therefore Kramnik defended the bishop with rook c6. Now queen b5, rook c1 check, king h2, rook f6, and the queen starts the attack on the light squares with queen e8 check. The other thing was to take the pawn on a5, but it's not so interesting if we can take the pawn on e6 and create attack on the opposite color of the bishop that the opponent has. With queen e8, bishop f8. If rook f8, of course, there will be simply queen takes e6, and more pawns will be gone very soon. While after bishop f8, white continues with bishop takes e6. The threat is bishop f7, after which the bishop will be hanging, and also the pawn on e5 will be hanging. Or bishop f5 is another threat, followed by queen d7 and queen takes h7, attack on the light squares. Black tried the move f3, seeking for counter chances and trying to open files for the rook. Well, nothing is really helping here. For instance, rook c2 would be met with queen d8, king g7, and now check. King is moving back on h8, and bishop f5. We were talking about the setup. The threat is checkmate on h7, bishop g7, and now attack on the light squares check. Attack on the light squares. Let's call these weaknesses. Queen is going on g6, and then the king is getting out in the open space where it will be soon checkmate. Bishop g6, and then black is helpless. He's going to lose material. And in this line, as we could see, the light squared bishop was doing really great job, and he was supporting the queen on the light squares. While f3 was a bit difficult for white to meet, but he found the correct way. He played g4, and after rook f1, king g3, rook g1, the king went in front of the pawns, but there was nobody to attack it there, and Anand went on to win. Now if check on h6, king g5 would be the answer. The threat is to take the bishop, and if rook g6, then king f5. After king g7, there is check, and the bishop is gone on f8, so white is easily winning. And instead of this check on h6, what happened in the game was king g7, but king g7 allowed white the time to advance that pawn further on g5. The pawn is taking the dark squares, it is securing the position of the king, and also it inserts one more important soldier in the attack, and this was basically the end of the game. If rook g6, here there is rook f7, white is going to win the bishop, and rook f4 check was answered king h5, rook g2, bishop f5, creating mating threats. So black found nothing better but to sacrifice the exchange, and he resigned after rook takes f2, queen takes e5 check, as he is also losing the rook after that to the usual double attack ideas. This is it, the rook is lost. So remember, in the middle game, in most of the cases, the queen is stronger than the rook. The reason for that is that the rooks are lacking open files, and they are not feeling that well like in the endgame.
மறக்காம சர்ப்ரைஸ் பண்ணுங்க. தேங்க்யூ.